I've been excited about this like future that creators can move across different platforms and bring their identity and their following with them, where creators can earn and like the primitives are there for them to have like the web 2 like virality, but also like the on-chain like earning mechanisms built in, and like the smart contracts and all of that behind the hood where creators don't have to know about it. I do think 2025 is the year that we make this a reality. And I think people have been talking about this for so long, but I think like all the pieces are in place for us to actually do it at scale. That is what I'm most excited about, is like the principles I think we all know. And like, you're like, oh, like imagine if Taylor Swift came on chain and like she could just bring her fans and like they get early access to tickets. Like all of the, like I think the ideas have always resonated with people, but like the execution in a way that is like ecosystem wide, I think we're starting to get there. And I think we will make huge progress on that in 2025.
Grab your headphones, get ready to vibe. ZEROPOD is coming at you and we're doing it live. We're talking about Ethereum and living life on chain. And every drop of CC0, yeah, we making it rain with ZEROPOD. Yo, I said ZEROPOD, yo. ZEROPOD.
Welcome back to another episode of ZeroPod, a zero copyright video podcast about enjoying Ethereum. I'm your host, Toady Hawk from the Zero Rights Media Collective, and today I'm excited to welcome Aneri Amin, the head of product in charge of social, creators, and on-chain summer at Base. Aneri's career journey spans from the high-tech hallways of Apple and Meta to Coinbase's on-chain trenches. She has been a force for change, driving innovation in creator tools, decentralized social, and on-chain ecosystems. And in this episode, we chat about Base's explosive first full year, its plans for 2025, and how they're building a future where creators like me can own our content, identity, and audience. Plus, she shares some great insights into her own journey, from a curious kid asking why to every question to a crew chief on the construction site for what she calls the new internet. This was an inspiring conversation about the power of community, ownership, and innovation. So buckle up, stay based, and let's dive right in. So people who are familiar with this podcast will know that we like to take a bit of a personal bent on ZeroPod and sort of dig a little deeper and hear about people and their journeys and how they ended up here in the on-chain space before we dig into the current things that are going on and what you're building. So if you're feeling comfortable, I'd love to hear a little bit about the Aneri story. If you could sort of take us back and tell us what you were like growing up, where did you grow up, and sort of what were you interested in when you were younger?
Yeah, so I grew up in the States and moved around quite a bit. So I lived a little bit in Michigan and Georgia, and then since I was like 15 or maybe a little bit younger, stayed in LA, and then have since moved around a lot, but I'm back in LA, which has been incredible. But yeah, I think I was a really polite kid, my mom says, but she said I was a bit annoying because I would always ask why like 100 times. Like she would like give me a piece of cheese and like everyone else would eat it, and I'd be like, why is it like look like this? Like, why is it orange? Why is it yellow? Like, and she was just like, you would just like never stop asking questions about everything. I feel like I've always just been like a really curious person. And then got really involved like growing up with politics and advocacy, just overall like middle school, high school, college.
Are we student council nerd friends?
A little bit. Like I was on it in 3rd grade and 4th grade, and then I like just didn't care for like the politics of it and like just cared a lot more about causes. But I don't know. My school was also like really competitive. So I just like didn't really like buy into like all of that kind of stuff.
My coup when I was a senior is I convinced the principal to invent a new student council role for events, like for things that would happen at the school.
That's incredible.
And then I ran for the role and got the role, and then got to miss first period for the entire senior year. That was my entire goal for that.
I love it. Create the job you want. That's awesome. I worked in for my congressman, for my senator, and for my mayor, and for my city council member. And so I've kind of always been into that. In my free time, I read a lot. For 3 years, I was in a streak where I did a book a week, which I don't do now because I just don't have the time. But I just like love like being with my own thoughts and just like in the idea space.
Do you like to read physical books, or do you read digitally, or what's your go-to?
I was pretty big on physical until like I traveled a lot a few years ago, and so then just started on Kindle and then like haven't looked back. But for the longest time, like when e-readers were big, I was like the biggest naysayer, and I was like, no, there's nothing like flipping a page. Now, if I like every once in a while, like I'll do a physical book because it's just like someone gifts one to me or something like that. But for the most part, I'll do Kindle.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. Any favorite books that you usually go to when people ask you what's your favorite?
I love like Daniel Kahneman books. Like I love just books about like psychology and why things are the way they are. So like Thinking Fast and Slow. Like I feel like it just helps me think a little bit better about it goes back to like how I was as a kid, but just like love books on like human psychology. And then a lot of them now are like really good product books. So like how do you get product market fit, and how do you let people, like how do you build viral products? Like I think there's a lot. I'll share some with you that.
Cool. Yeah, I love books about psychology, and especially like market psychology or even like evolutionary psychology. It's just really interesting. Like, why do we do the things we do, and just how like we're so new to the modern world in a way. Like it's only been like, I don't know, what, 200 years since we've been in this like modern era. That stuff is always very interesting to me.
Yeah, I read one recently that I'm like blanking on the name, but I tweeted about it, and it kind of goes through like the big inflection points in history that we've had technological progress, and it just is like a reminder of like where we've been and like what has been needed to see these like massive scale things. And like right now we think everything in like the online on-chain paradigm, but that's such a small like blip in like the full like progression of things. So
but tell us a little bit about your schooling. What did you study in school?
So yeah, in school I was really focused on like government. I was in this like pre-law major, so I was taking a ton of classes at the law school, which I loved because it was a little bit of like psychology and philosophy, but also just like how things work in society. But I ended up actually working in consulting as my first job, in strategy consulting at tech companies, which was just completely like no one would have expected. I worked in first like the private sector and then in tech specifically because that was just a completely different world for me. But my first experience was just like, I was like, whoa, like the types of problems and the scale that you can solve it felt like 10 levels of magnitude more than I had experienced in the public sector.
And that's where most people expected you'd end up? Like your parents probably expected you'd be in the public sector at some point?
Yeah, everyone just thought I would do like law or like political consulting or something that's like purpose-driven advocacy. Like I was just like really involved in like solving problems, but I think like the scale of things, like I just never knew about so like basically my first job in consulting was at Google in emerging markets and helping them build products for India, Indonesia, Brazil, Nigeria, Mexico. And just like seeing one, like the pace of innovation was like mind-blowing to me after working in government for so long. And then just like the scale that they could reach and like how they were also like people in tech were thinking about how to make lives better for people around the world.
It's almost like tech as a means to an end. You know, it can be used for many of the same ways that public policy can.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of like the first thing where I started working in consumer tech. And I was working in consulting, but a lot of the people that I worked with were product managers. And I felt like they were the ones that were asking the best questions, like thinking about the most interesting problems and how to solve it at scale. And I think was just a really interesting cross-section of like analysis and design and strategy and like thinking about users. And so I was like, this is what I want to be doing. And I was still like kind of exploring what space made sense, but I was like, this is like the scale that I want to be working on and solving problems for.
Can you kind of explain what a product manager does? I think that's one of those things that people sort of see and they're like, they don't really know exactly what a product manager does. So can you explain it?
Yeah. So I think product managers at the end of the day, like are responsible for the success of a product. And so that starts from like ideating, like what do we build? Why are we building this? Who are we building for? So like setting the strategy and the why behind everything, all the way to deciding like what gets built, why, like what order do we build it in? Like what's the most important thing to build, who we build for. So that's kind of like like the strategy piece, and then all of the execution. So like who is building it, like working really closely with engineers. How are we building it? What is the user experience, working with design for that? And then as a launch, like how do we, like, who are we building for? How are we going to actually grow this to new users? What are the value props for this, and how do we communicate that to people? So I think of it as just like the person who's responsible for the product's success, and for it to be successful, that means dropping any balls. Like if someone is not doing something, like that is on the PM to know. And then just like responsible for the end-to-end life cycle of that product. And some products are like pre-product market fit, which is a lot of where I've worked in, but some products are like, hundreds of millions of users use it, and you want to just scale it to the next level or optimize it or reduce costs. And so there's a lot of different types of PM roles, but at least in where I've worked, it's a lot of kind of like 0 to 1, like what are we building and how do we get it out there and start learning it as fast as possible.
It kind of almost sounds like you're like a startup founder, but the startup or this is your product, which may live in a bigger ecosystem.
Ownership mentality is like one of the most important skill sets a PM can have. And it's like, at the end of the day, like the buck falls with you, or like, you're responsible for it. And so I think it's very overlap with like startup founder.
One of your earliest roles was with Meta. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did there on their creators team?
Yeah. So, like a little bit before I joined Meta, I was doing my MBA at Stanford and was really interested in just the creator space. Because one, I was like a consumer of like social media, like a heavy consumer. And then I just like felt like creators were kind of like the foundation of modern culture and kind of just the trendsetters. And so I was diving pretty deeply into that space and kind of wanting to figure out what are the opportunities that I could play in that space. And so I created a TikTok account with two of my friends. And this was in like 2019 when TikTok was like just starting to kind of break out beyond like dance and music content. And so the TikTok was called.
And what was it before then? It was like musically or?
Yeah, musically. Yeah. And it was just basically like 15-year-olds like lip syncing. And so I created, but like they were starting to kind of like really push for other types of content. And so, and then like creators were going viral. And so we created this account called Puff Puff, which was this animated penguin. That's like focused on like kids and mental health, and ended up growing that account while I was in school to like 2 million followers. And now it's at 4.5 million followers. And so that was just like an amazing experience to just like learn. It was an incredibly hard too, which we'll talk about, but like just like learning firsthand, like how these platforms work and how they were building their algorithms to help virality, and how creators kind of like that journey of creators and constantly iterating to put content out there. So like basically the good and the bad. And so I went to Meta because I was just excited to like work deeper on creators and like kind of develop not only like I knew the creator space really well, and it's just how do you actually build products now at scale? Like I had 100 problems as a creator and frustrations that I wanted to like figure out how were the teams behind these platforms thinking about solving those problems for creators. So yeah, like I went to Meta, I worked on the creators teams, and was working on a few products, but one of them was like helping creators identify who their top fans were. And so one of the first things I told our director was like, what if we just gave email addresses to all of our, for creators, like, here is all of your top fans, or like a way to directly message them. Cause like, as we had 4 million followers, and I wanted to know who were the 20,000 that were the most loyal, that were constantly sharing our videos, that were potentially buying merch. That's who I wanted to know, and like how to identify them and how to continue to re-engage them, and maybe take them off platform and maybe like bring them to a game or to another collaboration. And of course, that's like at Facebook, the most radical idea ever is to actually give creators the ability to directly access their audience. And I think that's where a lot of that stuff really started resonating, where it's like, oh, okay, no, like I'm renting my audience. I don't own this audience relationship. I'm renting my follower base, and I'm fully at just the disposal of these platforms for what content gets out there. Like we would spend hours on a video and like 30 minutes on another video. And the one that we spent 30 minutes on would get like millions of views, and the other one would get like 50,000 views. And we're like, wait, we've built up a following of like 4 million. How can we not send this video to 4 million people every time? And it sounds so basic, but it's like, those are the frustrations creators have, especially after spending so much time building the following, is how do you actually reach them and convert that audience to do something else?
Yeah. Interesting. That's a lot of what we're learning actually in Adam's Blueprint program too, but from an on-chain perspective. But it really is powerful to be able to connect with your collectors, with your fans. And it hasn't traditionally been very easy, as you just mentioned. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So you were at Meta, you were working on some of these new ideas for creators. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of what you think is the biggest things you learned when you were at Meta as takeaways?
Yeah, I think one is how much power these platforms have, and then like the limitations of what they'll do. So it's like, yes, they really do care about creators because it's so successful for their business. So they are doing so much to help creators and bounties and rewards and ways. Like they just announced something today that lets creators experiment outside of their follower bubble and send videos to people that are like aren't their followers to kind of test new audiences or people who are
on Instagram. Or
this is at Facebook, on Instagram. But I think the flip side is I learned a lot of like the limitations of where they'll go. So like they'll never make their algorithm transparent and show creators what, like, this is what you need to do to be successful. Like they'll give you tips and tricks and stuff, but like they'll never say, hey, here is all of your audience data and you can port them over to TikTok and then port them over to Be Real or like any other platform that exists, Discord. And so I think that's where I was like, okay, there has to be something better. And like some of those examples, like Substack and Patreon and Discord, I think are some examples that are building in a more open way and giving creators more tools and more control. But I think that's when I really started diving into like not just crypto as digital money, which I was familiar with, but like on-chain as a new internet. And like seeing the potential that's like, wait, how we really can solve it is we have a better internet where you have tools and communities that are empowered and creators who don't just participate, but actually like own their ecosystem and own their relationship with their audience and own their content and have primitives that help them earn directly. And so I'm like, whoa, this is like what's needed. Like I kind of answered all the frustrations that I had. And then like seeing the limitations of where Web2 platforms would go, I'm like, this isn't going to be solved by a company like Meta or TikTok.
Yeah. Owning your content is one thing too, but like also owning your social graph as well and being able to have portability there with things like Firecaster and Lens that you just wouldn't have even on X or Facebook or any of these other platforms.
Yeah. And I think owning your content is like a means to that. So if you own your content and who has bought into it, then you can use that as a way to port your followers and your audience to other platforms and kind of build new experiences. But I think the platform dependency is like such a big unlock that on-chain gives you with like more collaboration rather than like walled gardens that are to keep you still creating on the same platform.
The walled garden thing is so crazy because even as creators, when you're trying to reuse your content, for example, so this is a long form podcast and we often try to reuse content where we can by posting it to short form content platforms like TikTok and Instagram. And it's funny where, you'll see that you go in the documentation for TikTok and they're recommending that you post things longer than 1 minute. And then you go to the documentation for Instagram and they're recommending that you post videos shorter than 1 minute. It's like they're constantly trying to encroach on each other's territory. But as a creator, it means nothing you do can be turnkey. It all has to be like custom for that platform and it can be tiring.
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of what I worked on Instagram were bonus programs for creators to get people to be exclusively posting on Instagram, which is like limiting, right? Like how much a creator can earn, or exclusively, basically creating trends, creating new music for Instagram first, because what they were seeing was just so much borrowed content. There's like all these sorts of like tips and tricks, and that's exactly one of them. Like another one that they always like release these playbooks of like, here's what to do to be successful, but like it's never enough information for you actually to know like how to crack the algorithm.
And it's very zero sum.
Exactly.
It's very zero sum too, right? They want you, how you can be successful here, not anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And their incentives are
nothing
else. Versus like on-chain, the incentives like baked into it are to build in the open and like creating Lego blocks that allow for composability that doesn't exist. Those incentives just aren't there. So it's never going to be in their best interest to like, do cross posting.
Yeah. Cool. You tweeted that you introduced a new core creator need when you were at Meta. What was that?
Yeah. So at Meta, like our creator framework was every kind of creator need boils down to creation, engagement, distribution, monetization. So like everything you kind of like, and that was like the framework that was used across product teams, across research. And with my like perspective as a creator, I would kind of always like write thought leadership and kind of share my insights on like all these panels about being a TikToker. And the need that I felt was really underserved was well-being. And so I kind of worked to introduce that as a new pillar. And so well-being it means like, a creator can take a step back for a week and not post and not get penalized, which was not the case. Like Instagram focused on frequency of posting. It also captures things like impersonation. Like there were so many people who would like copy our accounts and not get in trouble. And then like as a creator, it puts in so much work. Like you want to make sure that like you kind of own your presence. It also means like sustainable earning. So having ways that you can earn that are not just based on the amount of distribution you get, or like clarity around algorithms. And so I kind of created this like push around well-being, kind of shared my own experience to get enough alignment, and then brought other kind of creators from the ecosystem to help us land that like well-being was a core need that was ignored. And there were still things in Facebook's best interest that could, that would like make teams want to work on well-being. I think there's like the broader problem is solved outside of Facebook, like with things on chain. But I do think that like even Facebook could have taken steps to prioritize creator well-being more. And I know that a lot of teams are working on it. I think that like a lot of them are just Band-Aid solutions. So
you were like starting the labor movement for the on-chain or for the online creators.
Like even when I was doing this, like I don't think like I immediately knew on-chain was the answer, but I was like, okay, like how do we make things better? And like ownership was a huge part of it, right? Like how do you give creators like direct access to their top fans? And I was working with teams to do like insights dashboards so that they can identify and reward their top fans and also earn from them more sustainably. And so like all of these were kind of like encroaching on like on-chain primitives and principles before I even realized that like there were so many tools that people were building to make this feature like already, like right now.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good segue to kind of move into a discussion of the on-chain world. And I'd love to hear sort of how you came to discover crypto as an industry, as a movement, how you became a very on-chain person. Can you tell us a little bit about that history before you came to Coinbase? Or were they at the same time?
I first encountered crypto when I was working on emerging markets at Google. And I was like, this makes sense. Like people were unbanked. It was a better financial system. I viewed like things moving, like technological progress is like generally a good thing. And so like moving money online, like that just made sense and it resonated, but it wasn't like, I need to work in this space. Like, I think that type of stuff was exciting. It was really when, so like financial access was exciting, but never like gave me the urgency. I think the idea of people building a new internet where creators and communities kind of own the value that they generate was when I was like, okay, this is where I need to be working. And so I started talking to companies in this space, NFT platforms, decentralized social, and then Coinbase posted a role for someone to work on the creators team. And I was like, this is perfect. Like I had been a Coinbase customer for a while. I felt like Coinbase at the scale that they were able to make a dent in the space and actually help kind of at the scale that I was excited about to create better opportunities for creators. And so
I feel like Jesse just saw your Penguin account and was like, I need to get Aneri on board, and like wrote that job just for you.
I wish. I mean, if I were to write the job that I want to be doing, like I'm currently doing it. So that.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And like looking back, it's like it all made sense. But like at the time, like of course, none of this is clear. But yeah, so I came to Coinbase and at the time worked on a number of initiatives to kind of help push forward creators like decentralized social. One of those was Coinbase NFT, which we have since kind of like reprioritized our focus areas elsewhere. But also worked with like Stand with Crypto, which was an amazing experience because that was like kind of tying back to my community-driven advocacy roots. So it was the first PM to kind of stand up our like Shield movement and Stand with Crypto.
Love it.
We now have like an incredible external team that's working on that. And then Onchain Summer was when I first started working with the base team and with Jesse.
That hits home for me because Onchain Summer was a sort of a pivotal moment in my own on-chain creator journey, I guess, because at the time, we were looking, first of all, we were looking to found the Yellow Collective, and we weren't sure where we were going to do that. We didn't know figured it would probably be on the super chain, but we were looking at Optimism seriously. We were looking at Zora, and it was really like Onchain Summer that cemented it for us. And we were like, okay, this is like the culture. This shows that Base is really committed to, making sure creators can win. And that was a huge moment for me and the rest of our team to be like, yeah, this is where we want to launch Yellow, and also where we would come to eventually, put most of our content as well through the Noun Square. So,
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that that's what the biggest learning we had from Onchain Summer 1 was the amount of energy from the ecosystem and how, like, it's not just our role. Like, I think Onchain Summer 1, Base hadn't launched. And so Onchain Summer was kind of our first consumer launch for Base and kind of helping people come on chain, making it really easy for them to do it, helping them bridge funds to an L2, which sounds like at the time was like a huge hurdle for people. Now, like, people on board with their funds starting on Base, but there was just kind of a huge burden to explain, like, no, L2s is where so much of the on-chain activity, like, we saw that this is what we needed to scale and take to the next level. And then we learned that, people are organically building these amazing communities and projects. And so our job is to help enable them and help drive distribution and help give them the tools to make them successful. Because for us to build a new internet and a new on-chain economy, like, we need everyone. And so that's why I think you'll see our Onchain Summer 2, we went way, way, way bigger. We extended the time. We started with a build-a-thon to kind of reward and encourage people to, like, kind of shoot their shot and see if they could build an app or an experience that's going to onboard net new users. And then we kind of focus our efforts on helping curate and drive distribution for that. And then Onchain Summer 3, like, the goal is just to go bigger, and like we want Onchain Summer to be fully for and by the people. And so I think our goal is less and less to be like involved and more to be enablers to help the community drive this and shape this in the direction that they want to go. And we're there to, like, help boost and help support how we can with tooling and infrastructure and distribution. But, like, we want the community to kind of feel and take ownership of it. And I think they did a lot in Onchain Summer 2. And, like, we want to help support that even more for Onchain Summer 3.
Yeah, distribution is a big one, and I've banged this drum a lot in public, but I do think that that's one thing the Base team does extremely well, is understanding that builders and especially content creators, that's really what they need more than anything. Like, yes, money and grants are great and they help pay the bills, but ultimately all that stuff is downstream of distribution. And if you have a partner like Base that, like, has an audience and is willing to share that audience to amplify good voices, it just makes all the difference compared to, some of the other ecosystems that I've worked in. They don't hold a candle to how Base supports builders with that distribution.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's something that a lot of people say is, like, why they continue to build on Base is our distribution. But for me, it's, like, still day one. And I feel like what we're doing right now is such a fraction for what we can do and what we plan to do. So love hearing kind of, like, early success stories, but I think that, like, the best is yet to come here.
So we talked about Onchain Summer 1, the OG. We talked about the one that happened earlier this summer, Onchain Summer 2. In between those was, year one for Coinbase's Base. And honestly, like, it's hard to believe that it's only been 1 year. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you think Base found such tremendous success in its first year?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things. The number one is community. Like, I don't think Base is successful because of what we've built, but it's successful because of what's been built on it. And for sure, like, what we've built, like, 100% credit to the team that's building that. Like, for us to help more people build on it, like, we need to scale, we need to make things easier, we need to make tools easier to build apps. So Onchain Kit, that just gives you components that are plug and play. smart wallet that helps people onboard super easily. Like we are definitely building things to help our success. But it's really like, I think we've been blown away of what's being built on it. And like, that is a flywheel that is propelling our growth. And that's like the flywheel where we want to support even more, because then more people will build amazing apps on top of it that will usher in new users. And then we can support those builders. So definitely like number one thing leading to our success is like the community, the feeling that this is a community and there's culture to Base, and it's not just like a tech advancement. And then just like being blown away by things that are being built that we can't even predict. So for example, AI agents, like we definitely built tooling to help support that, but I think we've been blown away by the creativity of what we're seeing. And Base is becoming the home of innovation here. And like, we're here to support it, but we also don't want to be like, here's what to build, because like the community will blow us away with what they can bring to the table.
What's it been like working sort of right beside Jesse for the first year? You know, like a lot of people are impressed by his energy and his enthusiasm. What's it like working with him all the time? Is he always on like that? Give us the tea.
Yeah. I mean, he's incredible. Like I've worked with him for 2 years, and like one personally, just like as a mentor and a leader at the company, has just been like huge in helping give me opportunities, helping like grow me as like a person and as PM and as leader. So like really grateful for that. But like I just believe like Base is so lucky to have someone like him, because one is like he's a true visionary and like is just really amazing at like painting this like future, this on-chain economy that all of us are excited to be a part of, and like working with the community to get us there, and empowering people to get us there. I think it's like really difficult to set a vision that's so grand that like scares you. Like, and it should scare you, right? Like if it's not ambitious enough, then it's not like I think a big enough vision. So I think a lot of credit for him to do that. I think he's really like just his high standards, which is so important to like, I think that's kind of the, like, it's day one. Like, we are all working our hardest, but like, we're always reminded that like, it's a new day one, and we need like the best is ahead of us, and all of us are responsible for making that happen. So I think that like he has high standards, like we all have high standards, and is like constantly pushing the team to be the best that they can be, which is a tough work environment. Like I think it's like really challenging and rewarding if you can push yourself there. But yeah, definitely that's something that like the Base team, I think as like a core team, works incredibly hard, and like we're inspired to do it. But it's like it's challenging work that we're doing, and we're constantly being asked to like push ourselves. But I think a lot of that's also balanced with like rest and recharge. So for example, we're taking an extended recharge at the end of year, because we're like in a sprint currently to finish off the year strong, and we have super high ambitions for what we want to be doing in 2025. And like, we think that the team needs that extended recharge so that we're able to come back in 2025 and like do our best work. So yeah, I mean, overall, like I have like nothing but positive things to say about Jesse. For even those who don't know him but have interacted with him, I think have had like really good interactions. Like I'm not good at keeping in up to date with my messages on Twitter and Workcast, and I have like 1/100th of Jesse's following. I'll go in like every few days and respond to stuff, but Jesse will respond to every message and every comment and every email. And I think that
I always feel bad when I send him a message, because I'm like, I don't want to add to the pile of messages, but yeah, he's really great for that.
And he's incredibly like quick. Like he can read a doc and like really internalize it in like half the time that most people can, and like be able to like give quick feedback, and like all of that is kind of part of why he's able to do what he does at such a high level.
Well, speaking of Jesse, you and Jesse and some of the other Base team just got back from a whirlwind tour called the Base Around the World Tour. You went to Africa and India and Philippines and some other places. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and then tell us about what the experience was like?
Yeah, so I think like the main reason for that is like listening is the most important thing we can do, and like listening to our builders and people building on Base, and using that to learn and like incorporate that into our roadmap. So the goal was basically a listening tour, but also like a celebration of like the people who are building this on-chain economy. So we did Kenya. We went to Bangalore in India. Then we went to DevCon and kind of celebrated with like a larger team. And then went to Singapore and Philippines. I think the first takeaway that we all had was like, we like doubled down on our conviction that the best thing we can do is support the creators and builders that are building on chain. Like, yes, Coinbase and Base can build certain things and like we need to, but like all of those efforts should be in service of helping builders and creators succeed. So that was like one big learning. I think we were just like blown away by the talent in many of these builders and like the time scale that they were thinking about. The second, I think, big learning was just like communities are really important. Like we haven't done a similar trip in the US, and I think we have plans to, but so many of these people like knew each other. And so there'd be like a room of 100 people, 200 people, like from across Africa, mostly in Kenya, but folks had flown in from other countries and they all knew each other. They had done hackathons together. They had like supported each other in Discord. Like they'd helped do like security audits of each other's apps. And so I think there was just like a really strong sense of community in a lot of these countries. I think we also learned about some of the like native problems that they had, like the kind of challenges in different regions. A lot of countries that don't have like their government is less trustworthy. And so they want like more transparency in systems. We learned that like cross-border payments were challenges everywhere. So a lot of countries like in-country like peer-to-peer payments had been solved. They were like existing apps, but sending money outside the country was incredibly expensive, incredibly slow. And yeah, so I think like kind of double down our conviction on stable coins in every market and local currencies. And yeah, I think that there's just like, we need to be doing a lot more of this. We need to be hiring people in these countries that can help us kind of stay abreast of these challenges and help support builders. But yeah, it was an incredible trip, once in a lifetime for sure.
What kind of feedback did you get primarily from creators? And was it different in the different regions? Like, did you get different concerns in Kenya than you did in India? Just curious.
Yeah. So for example, some feedback we got in India was that like users in that market are very value driven. And so like the behavior of just like minting for the sake of minting isn't something that Indian builders thought could scale outside of like kind of crypto people.
Like patronage type?
Yeah, exactly. Like patronage, tipping, subscriptions. And like there is such a strong celebrity and influencer culture in India, more so than a lot of markets. And I even know this from my Facebook research. And so I think like the main feedback is like, what is the value that creators can show? And it needs to be more than just like patronage. It needs to kind of go beyond to like actually a value exchange.
Like more status games? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, status I think is a good type of value exchange, or like early access, like basically something that the creator is giving in exchange for you paying. So like, yeah, like if it's like tutorials, like you would pay for a class or you pay for, but like you might not just pay for content unless you feel either like that attached to the creator, like some of the like mega influencers, or you feel like you're getting something in exchange from the creator.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wonder if like patronage type minting behavior is like a luxury in some ways, you know, like maybe it's more common in places where people have disposable income to be like, hey, I like this person, I'm going to do this, versus, you know, you can't fault someone for being like, I want to make sure my family's taken care of. That may be culturally distinct. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's part of it's patronage, part of it is having disposable income where you're like able to kind of put it back in the creator economy. So that was like a unique challenge that I don't think was specific to India, but like I definitely heard that. In India, I think in Southeast Asia, gaming is really, really strong and like play to earn. Because there have been breakout successes in like Vietnam and Philippines.
What was the one in Philippines? I forget the name.
It'll like come to me the second I log off, I'm sure. But
me too. Anyway, it was the first big one I remember, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like that, because of that, not only had strong talent teams moved over for that one company, but like other founders just look at that as an inspiration. And so it basically means you have a really strong community of on-chain builders that are building in the gaming space. And so that was another learning, is you have these hero apps in certain countries, and that inspires people to build on chain, to build on base, and to build in that like domain, because they see people being successful doing that.
Axie Infinity.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that there's almost like a different sets of priorities for each cultural zone that you guys have to focus on. And I wonder if that's part of your strategy for putting people in place, like Samya, for example, in India, in terms of like trying to make sure your ears to the ground of those cultural differences.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, Samya is our kind of like base country lead for India, and he's doing an incredible job. Even before he had the role, he was building community in India. And then we're like, we have to hire him to do this officially on the team. And
I interviewed him right after he got that job. Actually, it was pretty awesome. And he was like, yeah, they asked me like, hey, do you know anyone for this role? And he's like, actually, I do.
Yeah, no, he was like, he's been incredible. And like, I think only been working with us for a month or two, but like the impact that he's had and just having someone on the ground. Like one of the quotes that like really resonated on this trip is, if you're not on the ground, you're not in the game. And we learned that, one, by just being in the ground ourselves and just like learning so much, but also just having someone like Samya on the ground. So we have a list of priority countries. I think it's like a few dozen at least that we want to like focus for early 2025 is hiring a country lead in each of these markets to help galvanize the community, help us understand the needs, help run kind of like go to market there, just like build community. And so that's a huge focus for us.
I love it. Can we talk a little bit about plans for 2025? Maybe some alpha. What are we most excited about for Base to roll out in 2025?
Yeah, so I think the main focus for 2025 is, you might have seen the announcement that Jesse is now working across both Base and Coinbase Wallet. And so Coinbase Wallet being kind of our main consumer product at Coinbase for people who are more on-chain native. I think that the alpha is that like expect a completely different Coinbase Wallet next year, and one that is built on open systems, open standards, open markets. And so
does that mean it's like kind of scrapped completely and you're like rebuilding from scratch, or it's just going to be changed so much that it'll be hard to recognize?
A little bit of both. Like we are definitely investing in our foundations and rebuilding a lot of our apps so that it's like more performant, like faster, easier, like able for us to open source it. And then also a redesign. So both like the technical as well as like the product and design stuff, we are looking at it with a new lens. And like the lens is, how do we help builders and creators go viral? And we have like strong distribution on Coinbase Wallet, and we want to kind of like build the pipelines to make that even better. So yeah, that's the main alpha is that. And then we are working on like getting out a beta experience in Q1, which we'll be sharing more about soon, of how to get kind of our first set of creators and communities into this new app.
All right. I'll be hitting you up to make sure I'm in the beta.
I'll be hitting you up actually for that. Okay. So yeah.
Someone was actually just asking Jesse about Coinbase Wallet today. I saw on an oncast, he responded.
I did see that. Yeah. Yeah. I love Jesse's response, which was one, like, we're working on it. Some of it's going to take time. But also like keep the feedback coming, and it doesn't need to be anonymous. Like people all the time will DM us or post on Farcast or like, here's what I want to see. And like, I think that feedback was great, but like, I wish I knew who it was so I could follow up with them and be like, hey, like what's not working? Is it not performant? Are you not able to connect to your apps? Do you not like the UI? Is it hard for you to find what you're looking for? So yeah, for those who have feedback, like, yes, we're working on all these improvements, but we can do that better if we know like how you guys are liking what we have right now.
And what you're doing. Yeah, fair enough.
Exactly.
As we wrap up, what about you personally? What are you most excited to be working on in 2025?
What am I excited about? Like, I think that, like, as you heard my story, I've been excited about this, like, future that creators can move across different platforms and bring their identity and their following with them, where creators can earn, and, like, the primitives are there for them to have, like, the Web 2, like, virality, but also, like, the on-chain, like, earning mechanisms built in, and, like, the smart contracts and all of that behind the hood where creators don't have to know about it. I do think 2025 is the year that we make this a reality. And I think people have been talking about this for so long, but I think like all the pieces are in place for us to actually do it at scale. And so that is what I'm most excited about, is like the principles I think we all know. And like, you're like, oh, like imagine if Taylor Swift came on chain and like she could just bring her fans and like they get early access to tickets. Like all of the, like I think the ideas have always resonated with people, but like the execution in a way that is like ecosystem wide, I think we're starting to get there. And I think we will make huge progress on that in 2025. So that's what I'm most excited about. Yeah. And I think just like I've been working on stuff for so long internally, and like I can't wait to launch it. And I can't wait to like, that's like where the hard part comes actually, is once we launch it and then we get user feedback. But that's also the most exciting part, because we very much intend to build in the open and like build with Lego blocks that other people can kind of permissionlessly build upon. And I think that's going to be like the most challenging, but the most fun part.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of the contrast of this industry that, compared to the industry you were in before, where everything was closed off and walled gardens. I think that's sort of the promise, right, of crypto and of building on chain, is that we can all kind of all build together towards one goal. Exactly.
Yeah. Composability, all of that. So I think it'll be a good year. It's going to be a tough year, but I think it's going to be like one of our I think it'll be Base's most exciting year.
Let's close off with a piece of advice from Aneri for any on-chain creators or would-be on-chain creators who are watching this. What advice would you give them?
I would say, one, like post a lot, and don't be afraid to like keep experimenting and like trying what resonates. I think for all creators, like because of the distribution you get on TikTok, that's like a forcing function. Like it's constantly experimenting, like, oh, this got 50 views, this got 20 views. Like, why did this happen? On-chain makes it a little bit harder because it's more tied to like mints than view count. But I would say like the most important thing you can do is just like iterate. The same way app builders are constantly like shipping and iterating, like don't hold things back, just put content out there and like see what resonates. And then second, I would say is like build your audience, because I think on-chain, you don't have as much to lose. Like if you're building your audience, you can bring them across other platforms. And so like people are starting to build the like interoperability things where like your audience can now see your mints on like many other platforms. And so I think that there is going to be a lot in 2025 to just like having a large audience and being able to reach people across like multiple different clients and apps.
I love it. Well, going to be putting in the work to get this edited over the next week or so. And this is going to be planned to be released not next week, but the week after. So it'll be a nice holiday surprise for folks, and a nice way to hopefully cap off the year and look forward to 2025.
Love it. Yeah. Lots of exciting stuff in store. Keep reaching out to me on Farcaster or Twitter if people have feedback. But yeah, it's just been like an incredible year. I think if you asked me in January if I thought, one, like we would go around the world and have rooms of like hundreds of people filled in, like I don't think any of us predicted the amount of like base builder energy that we've seen this year. And just like the organic community and creators, like it's just like blown us all away. So all in on helping y'all succeed in the coming year.
I love it. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with us, Aneri. It was a great conversation, and make sure you stay super based.
Thanks for having me. Super base. Should have worn it, but I'm proud owner of that hoodie.
Well, I was wondering that when I was putting on it, I was like, oh, is she going to wear that and we're going to be like matchy? But it's okay.
Next time.
Next time. All right.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Teddy.
See you on Chain.
ZEROPOD.